Hello, everybody, and welcome to Matchday Matinee, where we take our love for football and cinema and combine the two to talk about the best football movies available today. I'm joined today by Adam Ducker and Mark Guillerme. You know what, guys? Football is actually back. Football is finally back. How are you guys feeling?
I cannot wait. I'm getting up at 6 o'clock tomorrow morning to watch Korean football, and I don't care.
Suwon Samsung, baby.
Yeah. And for those of you who don't know what I mean by football is back, means the actual live football is back. So we're getting K-League tomorrow, and we're getting the Bundesliga starting next Friday. Some of us think it's a little bit of a haste decision for them to rush back into sports, but we really do appreciate the football being back regardless. So are you guys cheering for any teams in the Bundesliga when it comes back?
Borussia Dortmund have been my team for a while. Since in the 90s, Football Italia used to be this show on in England. So me and my brother both picked Italian teams, and he was Juventus and I was AC Milan. So when Dortmund played Juve in the 97 Champions League, I just cheered for Borussia Dortmund anyway, and they won. So they've been my team since then in Germany.
How about yourself, Mark?
Gonna go Bayern. We got one of the best Canadian young talents on there, Alphonso Davies. So it's a perfect time to cheer them on. And my authentic kit from Adidas just arrived today.
Nice.
Picked it up on sale. Serendipitous. I'm ready to go.
So for myself, this is going to be an interesting time to follow Eintracht Frankfurt. And the only reason I'm following them is because I was born in Frankfurt, as some of you may know. And so actually I'll be able to support my local team for the first time. As most people know, I'm a Liverpool supporter, but this will be a good way for me to also reconnect with Eintracht Frankfurt and the Bundesliga, which I didn't actually follow as much when I was younger, which is sort of weird. I started following soccer more closely when I came to Canada. But yeah, I mean, looking forward to following Eintracht Frankfurt. I was actually supposed to be at a game in Frankfurt, before this COVID thing. Yeah, before this COVID thing hit. But anyways, that's enough about ourselves. What movie are we watching today, Adam?
United Passions, which is a joy, I'm telling you. So I'm going to we'll read the official plot synopsis. I've got my own, but we'll do it how we've always done it. So United Passions is an epic, untold story that brings to life the inspiring saga of the World Cup and three determined men who created it. Driven by their vision, passion, the three men overcome their doubts and fought obstacles and scandals to make the World Cup a reality. Spanning the tumultuous 20th century, this timeless saga celebrates the event that became the most popular sporting event in the world. I struggle to get through that. The cast is Gerard Depardieu, Sam Neill and Tim Roth in the three main roles. Director is Frederick Abutin. The production was by Felmer Films. Came out on 5th of June 2014, and it was a whopping 110 minutes long. Boy, it felt it.
That's 110 minutes too long.
Yeah. So I have come up with my own quick synopsis before we dive deep into the film. So this film was released in 2015 under the cloud of a FIFA corruption case that resulted in multiple arrests for racketeering, money laundering and fraud. United Passions is an epic whistle-stop tour of FIFA's checkered history from the incorporation in 1904 to 2004's announcement of the World Cup coming to South Africa. Along the way, we follow from FIFA's humble beginnings to the era of growth under João Havelange and ultimately Sepp Blatter. Along the way, we learn how FIFA single-handedly brought football to the world, apparently at the will of God Almighty. From the joy of the first ever World Cup in Uruguay to USA 94, we see it all in this breakneck recap of FIFA's highest moments, whilst ignoring anything remotely controversial. This film... So to start, it takes liberties, and they also admit it from the start, because the first thing that comes up on the screen is it says, whilst this story is inspired by actual events and real people, certain characters portrayed, characterizations, scenes, and dialogue spoken represent a work of dramatic fiction.
Yeah, they had the courage to put that right up front instead of hiding it in the credits like Pele did.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah. It's just... They take a lot of liberties, which I guess will kind of get through. The biggest thing for me is, with this film, it's 110 minutes long, but it spans a period of 100 years in those 110 minutes. And it gives nothing it just glosses over whole things. And that's no more obvious than like the very beginning of the film when FIFA send a letter to England and then they show up to talk to them at a football match and try to be like, hey, we're FIFA and we're taking over international football. And arguably so, England are like, what the hell? We codified the rules. And if you think about it, if it's some international association turned up at the NBA's door and were like, hey, we're going to take over international basketball. You guys are small fry now. I think NBA would be a bit annoyed because at this point, the FA, the English FA had been around for like 40 years. So yeah, that
English FA was walking around looking like Mr. Peanut with their top hats. And
yeah.
Did you hear at one point they're giving tips to the players of get the ball, keep possession of the ball, and score with the ball.
Yeah,
they weren't groundbreaking.
This film accentuated every single stereotype about whether you're English or European. The funniest scene, one of the funniest scenes, and I think this will stick with me for a long time because it was so preposterous, is when they're sitting around the table, trying to say that they want to create an international body to make sure everybody plays football the same. It's like, what should we call this? I know. The Fédération Internationale de Football Association. And I was like, what the hell? And you see the camera panning directly into his face. Like, I was like, this is just ridiculous.
They even did that to be dicks to one up the FA.
That's what they call the English bastards. So yeah, that's such a weird opening. And from that very first moment, I had my back up against this film just because the IFAB had already been formed in 1886, which is the International Football Association Board, who still to this day oversee the rules for football. That already existed. So for FIFA to come and waltz in and be like, we're better than you, it's just, they had some audacity. And they even showed it, even the contempt that Jules Rimet showed the Olympics. Like a little bit later in the film, you see Uruguay having won the Olympics, and he's like, no, you have no right over football. And it's like, well, who are you? The Olympics are just as much a upstart having football as you were trying to organize your own World Cup. And then, they just keep going in. They set up FIFA seemingly out of spite almost and decide they'll include people. They want one over those English bastards, they say. They announced the World Cup. Then the one thing that really wrangled me early on was when they started talking about Africa and saying about countries that an English guy says, why are they taking football to a country that's no one heard of with natives, and how stupid are they to understand a sport made by the whites? And it's like, that's just not true at all. And I had to go and ask my dad because I knew he had told me previously about two pretty famous African descent players back in those days. And there's a guy called Arthur Wharton who played for Sheffield United way back when. He died in 1930, so he died before the first World Cup happened. So he'd already played. And the most famous guy is Walter Tull, who was born in 1886, died in 1918. He played football for Tottenham Hotspurs and Northampton Town before he died in the First World War. So he had played for a pretty long time professionally by this point and was a pretty decent player. Came up through the ranks, played for an amateur team, and then was signed by Tottenham aged 21. So I'm not disregarding that obviously there is still a racism issue in football and England's played its part in that, but to just be like, hey, there's the black people aren't welcome playing football and the English say so, and FIFA's going to be all inclusive and not racist. It's just so disingenuous, and it's an undercurrent that runs through the entire film that I kind of find untenable. I couldn't like this film from the off.
Yeah, and the film also doesn't really find itself. What genre is it trying to be, right? Because there's a point in time where the first Jules Rimet is standing in the newly built Uruguay stadium, and it starts snowing, and it feels like a Disney moment. Beauty and the Beast is about to break out, and they're about to dance in the middle of the in the stadium, and then it goes to really serious courtroom drama when Sepp Blatter is in doing his deliberations and they're voting, and it's just it. And it just doesn't make any sense. Or it tries to be a business, a thriller.
It's a clear propaganda piece for FIFA, 100%. And it's it's done without any like self-awareness, which is even worse. I mean, that scene you were mentioning when they first formed FIFA, they're sitting around the table and they're deeming themselves literally the only qualified group to run world football. And this is a movie written by them. So they've actually said this line and they believe it, which is insane. Like,
and not only that,
the balls.
But there's an undercurrent throughout it that they are doing God's will.
Yep.
By
literally,
creating the
like
World
there's
Cup,
one scene, it wasn't Havelange or Bladder, but he's praying in front of the cross.
Yeah.
And it's like God is...
that was Jules Rimet. It's Jules Rimet.
Okay. Deborah, So it's God's intervention, and then it shows the cross, and it slowly forms into Christ the Redeemer in Brazil.
Like
he's literally doing God's will, and it's almost close to that scene from the one that Radev mentioned, where he's in Brazil, and I think it's God's will for Brazil to win the World Cup. And then when they don't win at the Americana, he has to walk onto the field and present the trophy to, I think it's Uruguay, right?
Yes, it is.
It would have been Uruguay, yep.
It's just like a sad moment, and he feels the entire weight of the nation on top of him, and God has almost failed him because Brazil hasn't won.
Hey, and that was also the starting of the Pele movie that we did a couple of weeks ago. So look at how we're, blurring the lines a little bit. We've got our own little cinematic universe here now. But I wanted to go back, that line in the beginning about, although this is based on true events, some of the stories might be fictitious or whatever the disclaimer said. It's fictitious because, like you said, they're pumping themselves up to doing God's work and stuff. But FIFA's had its fair share of scandals, which they don't show in this movie at all, because it's like it's how the Pele movie was for Pele by Pele. This is for FIFA by FIFA,
or for Sepp Blatter.
Yeah, because they do throw people under the bus.
Yeah, because Avalanche, it's kind of hinted at his shady history, and
they fully show it. Yeah,
I guess they don't. They mention it. It's not like they never use the word corruption or anything, and he tries to justify it. But that's the weird thing, isn't it? So we're jumping ahead a little bit, but when they jump to sometime in the 80s, they jump to Avalanche and him on a boat. Oh no, this is 98. No, it's in 98. They jump to him on the boat. Yeah, and he's talking about, sure, no sport's spotless, and sure, we have the slightest breach in ethics, and he tries to make himself out like a hero, and Spectre is this man who allowed corruption to occur, and it's kind of okay in a way because of this divine right to run football, and how he's kind of accepting that people do bad things, and that's cool because we brought football to the world. Yeah, exactly. We brought football to the world, which is a whole other issue that this film has, that they didn't bring football to the world. They just helped popularize it, I guess. It's just super, they make out there's a whole period in the 1970s in this film where it makes out that they basically brought football to Africa.
There's a bit apartheid with football.
And there is a weird issue with the apartheid. They make, what's his name? The English president who gets usurped, Stanley Rowe. They make him out to be a massive racist. And whilst he did have a sort of potted history, that's not why he lost the vote to Avalanche. He lost that vote because Avalanche went round all of the African nations in person, and basically essentially bribed them all with we're going to give you money, build you football pitches, build you centres of excellence. And Stanley Rose didn't do that because he'd already been assured by all those African nations that he had their votes. So there was a bit of arrogance about it. But you would, if anybody said, yeah, I'm going to support you, you would probably believe them, right? And it's just weird.
If you're working for FIFA.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But I pulled out a book, David Cohn's book, The Fall of the House of FIFA, and there's a whole chapter on it. And basically, Avalanche went around every African nation with Pele and basically went around saying, look at what this black man has achieved, and you could have the next Pele in your countries. He went to 86 countries in total. And Pele even said, I represented to the blacks in these countries what a black man could accomplish in a country where there was little racial prejudice, as if having physical evidence that a black man could become rich, even in a white man's country. So specifically, that was for South Africa. And it's just weird how, it's baffling. And then that's the only reason he lost that vote, because he had the support of all the South American countries, and he went all the way around to the African countries, promised them development programs, said we're going to increase the number of teams at the World Cup, so you guys are guaranteed spots. So he basically bought them off.
Which is what they're doing again now, basically.
But then it's not made out as if that's what happens. It's as if the English racism allowed it to happen.
Yeah.
And interestingly, like Stanley Rouse was like a pivotal part of South Africa, actually, because South Africa got kicked out of FIFA essentially because of the apartheid.
Yeah.
And he was played a part in getting them back in, because they went to a lot of African countries, including South Africa, and said, we need to have more of a presence here to help grow football here. So he actually did his bit in some regards, but this film just was like, forget it.
But it wasn't until the 90s they came back into FIFA, right?
Yeah, it was pretty late on, yeah.
92, I think I read. But so the timing of this movie was, I think you said 2014? Does that sound right?
2014 it was at Cannes Movie Festival. 2015 is when the US
official release.
Happened.
Yeah.
And I think that lines up with, so BBC did the expose in 2010, November 2010, right before the announcement of the Qatar and Russia World Cups.
Yeah.
So it would have made so much sense that they made this as a hit piece on the FA and English football in general, just for retaliation to do that.
Because, what was it? There was that Panorama show, where he absolutely did a hatchet job on all of FIFA's shady stuff.
Essentially, three senior FIFA officials who were participating in the selection process actually took bribes from International Sports and Leisure during the 90s.
Just three?
That's what it says.
I think that's the shocking part.
And they said that one of the officials who actually took the bribes was Ricardo Teixeira, the former son-in-law of former FIFA president João Havelange.
So, and he's all caught up in that ISL thing with the TV rights being sold for like next to nothing, and then massive profiteering off it.
I mean, if there's one place you want to do corruption, India is it, right? So, man, it was interesting for sure. It's this movie was something else. Like, I'm speechless, and I just watched it, by the way, full disclosure. I watched it just before we're recording this. I actually don't know what to say. Like,
it's shot really well. Like, it looks great. Like, there's so many scenes in it that are just like beautiful, but the dialogue, it sounds like, you know, when you do like an audio tour at a museum and the guy has a little speaker and he's talking, that's basically what the audio was, or sorry, the dialogue.
I just want to cut back to you saying how well shot it was. There was one really good scene, 1970 Mexico, Italy versus Brazil, and it's got like a cameraman on the sideline with like an old school massive camera, and it zooms in on the lens and it's reflecting back the match footage. And it's just like, there's some artistic merit to that. Like, somebody thought that shot out so well, and then it's not long after that, 1976, when they're in Ethiopia, and Sam Neill and Tim Roth are in the back of a van. They're talking about apartheid and all of that, and about how they don't want to get involved in the politics, but they realise that politics and sport are inseparable. They're talking about such grandiose concepts of like football's relationship to world politics and stuff, and they couldn't be more disinterested and bored. Like, I've never seen. They just sat in the back of this van. They've just don't care what's going on. And I had to wonder why these two actors took this role. And Mark, do you remember when we did the Final Score episode? You said about Pierce Brosnan. The Pool House. So Tim Roth, pretty well-known actor, been in a lot of films. I looked him up. His net worth is $7 million, which isn't a huge amount for a celebrity in this day and age. He basically said, this is a quote from him from an interview, "The film is awful. I can't say that because I haven't actually seen it yet, but I hated doing it. It was the wrong film for the right reasons. I had 2 kids in college, so I made a decision that was poorly judged. Once you make that decision, you have to follow through. It's a hard road being something you don't want to do. I'm glad I did it for my family."
That's honorable, though. I mean, so he did the movie to put his kids through college?
Through college, yeah. He had 2 kids already in college, and like, when he... Yeah, he's not like a super wealthy celebrity, so he needed that money. It wasn't like a vanity thing, like he wanted a bigger house or something. Like, he did it for admirable reasons and took the paycheck and ran.
Kind of respect that, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I would take a movie if I could, pay towards something that's kind of necessary. So
Yeah.
And
Well, that was the concept of, so we have the final score episode. So we're saying that, I think it was Bruce Willis said, sometimes you just take a movie to pay for your boathouse or your pool house.
it's true. Why not?
So there's no artistic integrity in it. You need to pay off a part of your house.
But I feel like Gerard Depardieu and Bruce Willis are afforded those luxuries, because if it's a guy that's just kind of coming up towards the top of his trade and they take a movie that absolutely tanks, not sure that they're going to get a movie in the future or any good movies in the future, right? At least with Bruce Willis, he has a luxury of knowing that I'll always find work.
He has his money. Anything
exactly.
is just like
it's bonus. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But yeah, the acting's absurd. And then just after that van scene is another like huge God scene. 1978, Rio de Janeiro. They're talking about not letting South Africa in the World Cup. Haviland is saying he doesn't care about protests against human rights violations. He says the world's hypocrites. He says that black players do more for society than civil rights movements, which is kind of absurd. Like, they represent things, but if you look at some of the biggest civil rights movements in the world, they've done way more than football ever does. And this is the scene where his kids, or I think they're his nephews, are playing Sabutio on a table. And
that's right, yeah.
Sam Neill comes and grabs the ball up and he says to the kids, they're like, "Uncle, that's cheating." He's like, "Imagine there's a cloud and God intervenes and poof, there's a goal. Is that cheating?" And then one of the kids goes, "But you're not God." And he just goes, "You think so?" Like, it's this other, like, just complete, like, delusional complex that, like, the head of FIFAs are doing such great things. And, like, I remember that even extends to Blatter. I remember towards the end of his, like, reign, he came out and said, like, he's the only person in the world other than the Queen that can show up at any country and be afforded every single, like, thing under the sun, because it's like a FIFA president has, like, diplomatic immunity no matter what. And it's just like,
well, if you read some of the demands, like some of the demands to host a FIFA World Cup are ridiculous. It's pretty much immunity to anything you want to bring into the country, a cut of anything that is sold with the FIFA brand on it. It's insane. That's why you look at a lot of countries now. Yeah, exactly. Like, a lot of countries now are shying away from hosting the Olympics or the World Cup because this myth of having this great investment in your economic future isn't there. It's not true.
It's not true. You're right. A lot of companies a lot of countries actually go into severe debt trying to put on and host these events, and they don't necessarily make the return that they need. I know Toronto for a very long time was in the running for the 2008 Olympics, which we didn't win, which went to Beijing, but we were in the final kind of two between us and Beijing. And then we always had the conversation on TV and the radio whether we would make a bid for another one. And, you know, the politicians, as well as most of the people, just shut it down right away to say this is not worth it. Financially, this is not worth it.
No, I'm pretty sure the Montreal Olympics just got paid off a few years ago, the 76 Olympics.
Yeah. Yeah, so, I mean, you know, we've talked about all the things that happen with FIFA. First of all, this movie spans 100 years, as you were saying, Adam, and it just kind of like does a quick glance by every single year there was a World Cup. It's like, now we're in Germany or 74. Well, now we're in Argentina 78, right?
Yeah.
And
it gets to a certain point. Like, there's all these highlight scenes up to a point, and then it gets to like the 1982 World Cup where it's been expanded, and there's the disgrace of is it Gedon, where Holland and Germany, Germany and Austria fix the game essentially. Yeah. And then so they go through that. Sepp Blatter kind of gets hung out to dry by Avalanche, and then after that we get a quick time of like 1982 all the way through to basically, so I wrote quick time. We see the 86 World Cup. It shows that bloody Maradona handball. We see Horst Dassler dies, the Adidas founder. We see Italia 90, like, really quick. We see the USA 94. We see some highlights of women's football. And it's like this huge thing. And it's like, it's making, and you just see Blatter, like, it's like a montage of Blatter, like in rooms, in cars, waving at people, sunglasses on. It shows the Rose Bowl in the States. It shows Baggio's miss. And then it cuts to, we don't see anything until after World Cup 98, where they're like, we don't want any hooligans in world sport. And it's like, it just shows this huge span, and it's like, Blatter made all of this, and this is how brilliant he is. Forget all the scandal that was happening in those years. He made football, like seemingly taking sole responsibility for women's football, because it cuts earlier in the film, says we should be concentrating on women's team, and it's like Blair's the same man. This is the same man
the
that
Hope
said,
Solo.
yeah, or said that women should dress in skimpier costumes.
Yeah.
I
They
forget
should
how
dress like
early
volleyball players at the Olympics.
yeah,
Volleyball
it's-
players was his rationale.
You know what I think, though? I mean, given I guess the story that they're trying to tell, if you had given FIFA story to a third party, maybe production company or a director, I think this could have been a really good story.
Even a segment of it.
If they told it factually, I mean, right? Not if they all these the smoke and mirrors that they're putting around this. I think the story of FIFA deserves to be told in its entirety. But not like this. This is just a propaganda piece. It's like something the Nazis would do, man, honestly.
You could almost do it. Have you guys seen I forget what it's called, the show about Tupac and Biggie and how they died? It's like a drama.
Yep.
And it's set in the present day, and it's people investigating it, and it goes right back. You could almost do it like that. Like people, FBI agents in the modern day investigating the corruption, but then covering the events and covering the good things that happened, but ultimately unearthing all the crap they did.
But you don't need to show the entire 100 years. I mean,
No.
even from the
cut
formation,
through
it was 20 years until Ramey said, we should have a world championship. It's like, it took you that long to figure that out.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. By that point, the home nations, as they're called, so the UK, Scotland, Wales, Ireland, were already having an international tournament of sorts between themselves, and they were trying to invite other nations. They've been doing that since the early 1900s. But yeah, you're right. It wasn't until like we see them all going over in the boat, don't we, to Uruguay. It's also sort of implied that bid was corrupt as well, right? Because that man comes off and offers them money if they'll bring the World Cup to, because they think Uruguay did pay for the boat and everything to get everybody over there.
But it looked like it was implied that them winning that bid was shady, but they never fully expanded on that. And then when he answered the phone and he was saying, we'll be ready for you in 2 weeks, and then he stood outside of the stadium, like I couldn't tell if it was implying at that point that the stadium wasn't ready or he was behind on schedule.
Well, even when they met in Paris, when they initially made contact, Jules Rimet actually says, so, with you hosting this World Cup, you won't actually, pay off the referees to give you decisions one way or the other. And the thing is, even if they did, who would know whether it's true or not? Like, who would actually know?
Yeah, that's true, right? There's so many, weird little things that we would never know because we're hearing like second and third hand accounts by now, right?
Well, Tim Roth, I think we might maybe have this written down, Adam, but Tim Roth said that he questioned the script.
Yes.
Did you hear about that?
He said he tried to show his corruption by his performance in it and by adding nuances. And it's like, where? Because
I never saw that. Yeah. So I read that fact before I saw the movie and I kept an eye out for it. And maybe that's on the cutting room floor.
I don't get it. And his performance really, I don't know if either of you noticed how his accent changes throughout the movie.
Yeah.
There's one time in particular, it's the European Cup final in 75, where he seemingly switches from like a European accent to it almost sounds like an American accent, like mid-sentence, and it's just like, what the fuck is going on here?
Well, when he gets the Coca-Cola sponsorship. Yeah, that scene when he gets a Coca-Cola sponsorship. And, oh man, so they build up to these tournaments. They're like, the tournament's coming up. This is going to be FIFA's grand stage. And then they'll show the exterior of the stadium. And you're like, oh shit, here we go, baby. And then they cut to him in a bar talking about getting a Coca-Cola sponsorship. It's like, you guys teased it and you skipped right past it. Like, they're the heroes of this movie.
Yeah, even their coverage of the first World Cup is basically non-existent. Like, it doesn't show much match footage at all. No. Because obviously there wasn't any, but that was a really good opportunity to recreate the actual footage from the first World Cup as best as they could show here was the beautiful moment that the World Cup kicked off, and they don't.
Speaking of bars, Mark, even when Sepp Blatter finds out he has a job in football, he's there sitting in an empty pub with another guy having a drink, and basically he's like, I've got a job in football. Okay, like, do you elaborate the script a little bit more on what this job is? Because he eventually became the director of technical development programs under Joao Havelange, and they don't say when he became that. I'm not sure where Sepp Blatter came from.
Yeah, he didn't have a history in football, right?
No,
Was
he's
it?
an accountant originally, I think. Yeah.
Okay.
Because they talk about that when he comes in, because he's the guy that will find them money. And even that's implied
Yes.
that that's kind of shady, right? Like,
And then was it him that said being FIFA's president means no money, no glory?
yeah.
I'm sure. Sure it doesn't. But it's just so random. Like the first time we meet Sepp Blatters in a pub, completely out of context, and some guy just saying, "Oh, I've got a job in football," and long behold, this guy's like the main protagonist of the entire movie. Like,
yeah.
One of the scenes you mentioned. So when they're skipping through the 90s and there's that upbeat montage.
Yeah.
When they're showing like the Baggio miss and France winning. It's upbeat. I burst out laughing at this part. So it's upbeat. It's showing how much progress FIFA's making. And then they show Dassler. They show Dassler's death, and it shows his coffin being lowered, but it's part of the upbeat montage.
Yeah. And it's just like, later shit on. Like, I know, granted, Adidas have kind of owned up to having a bit of a crappy legacy, but don't go put a guy's funeral in the middle of this.
It was celebrated,
So, I guess we've kind of touched on what pisses us off about this movie, which is essentially everything. But what are some of the good scenes that you guys can actually safely say that you guys, that scene was kind of okay?
You know what I really liked? I like, you always read about it in some of the old like World Cup history books and everything, but just the image of all of these nations traveling by ship to the host country.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Like I always kind of pictured that in my head, let my imagination run wild with it. I thought it was really cool that we actually got to see that, like them training on the boat and the team photo while they're at sea. So it was cool to see that finally.
How about yourself, Adam? Any scenes that stick out as maybe this was okay?
Not really.
Seriously, not one?
No, I don't. Like, I like seeing. I like the Sabutio scene, but because it's absurd, I don't think it's a good scene. I think it's still preposterous. I think ultimately, I like how Havelange is like shown off as being a prize prick.
Right.
Even the only thing I maybe like is on the boat when he's like, he should have been exonerated after all he's done for the world and what good people. And then even in that same sentence, he's asking Blatter, like, hey, how are you going to win the vote? And he's like, right, here's what you need to do. Find 5 indecisive members and go and buy them, basically. It sounds like blackmail. I get, like, his presentation, even though Sam Neill's performance is still kind of shitty, that's the only redeeming thing that they kind of do crap all over him.
Havelange was still alive when this movie came out, too.
Was he?
Yeah, he died in 2016.
Like 100,
this movie came out in 2014. Yeah, 100.
Yeah.
I guess for myself, if I'm thinking about one scene that kind of sticks out, and not necessarily because the scene was good, and I think this is the same reason maybe you like the Sabuteo scene, because it was Sabuteo.
Yeah,
for
that's
me,
the thing.
Exactly.
I grew up playing. It's so
exactly.
Cool. Yeah.
I feel that same way about when he shows when Adi Dassler shows was it Sepp Blatter, the tango ball.
The tango ball, yeah.
Oh, yeah, that was actually cool. Yeah, that was really cool.
And just because it's a tango ball, not because the scene was brilliant or anything. Tango is such a legendary ball, right, in football history. So that's why that's the only scene I enjoyed. But also going back, I know, Mark, you mentioned that some of the filming locations and the way they had done the costumes and the surroundings, they were good. I especially enjoyed the scenes of Paris, specifically when Jules Rimet was at that Uruguay press conference after they won the Olympics. Just him getting in the car, leaving. They had actually dressed up the streets really nice, like they would have looked in the 30s with the cars, with the way people are dressing. So yeah, that's the only real thing that stuck out for me, as well as a tango ball. That's about it.
I'll tell you another scene. Oh, go on.
Sorry, the scene between the Hungarians and the Germans, that looked really visually interesting. Where it's almost like a mythical match, and he's telling the story of the Hungarians let the Germans win. I think it was around World War II, and it was kind of like a fog-filled pitch.
Yes.
That was the Ukrainians, right?
Ukraine, yeah.
Yeah, that was the Ukrainians.
Oh, was Ukraine? Oh, sorry, okay. Yeah, I watched this on my phone.
It's all good. I didn't really pay that much attention either.
But I thought that scene, it looked really good. This scene looks, the movie looks good. I don't think any of us can deny that. It's a beautiful movie. Yeah. Which is even more disappointing.
And that's why I'm thinking, with a proper director who actually knows his job, and with a
director though.
No, and an impartial third party, that's just going to tell the shit like it is. I think this could have been good, but that's for another time.
This is like a marketing. This is like if you start a new job and they show you the orientation video.
100%. That's a great analogy.
Then why make it a $27 million movie?
Yeah.
That's insane. That's more than like some nations have towards their budget for their national teams.
Yeah. And then I don't know if you guys looked up how much money this movie made at the cinema.
I have.
Like $100.
So it made $918 in the US.
Oh my god.
That's amazing.
In Phoenix, it made $9, which means one person went to see it. Which is ridiculous. Screen Media distributed it in the US and immediately pulled it from cinemas like the same weekend. You can currently buy it for $1 off Amazon.
Amazing. You gonna make the purchase or what?
No, I'm not gonna. I don't need to add this crap to my collection.
This is one of the. Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I'm saying this is one of the only movies that I've seen on Rotten Tomatoes that has 0%.
Yeah.
Rotten Tomatoes doesn't even do that to movies that they hate or that aren't part of production studios that they're not in bed with, right? But this actually got 0%.
It means literally nobody liked this movie.
Yeah, like worse than that. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the Rotten Tomatoes score is I think 60 and above is either fresh or rotten.
Yeah.
So that means literally nobody thought it was better than a 60%.
Right.
But how did this movie get, I don't know what the selection process is, but the Cannes Film Festival, it was actually one of the selections. Is it basically like throw a bunch of money at them and you'll be included?
I think that's what happens. I'm pretty sure you pay to have a place, because there's been controversies before, haven't they, where there's stuff that people feel shouldn't have been there, but then Cannes is like, well, they paid for their spot.
And then I'm wondering if how they had it here in like select theaters, is that just so it can get an Oscar well, I guess, an Oscar consideration, because it has to show in a certain number of theaters.
Now,
yeah, exactly.
Netflix will show their films for like one weekend just so they can get that.
So I remember this partly from a show I used to watch called Entourage, and just actually looking at the Cannes Film Festival right now, you actually have to submit your film and a committee looks at it and accepts it. So in pure FIFA fashion, I'm thinking there's some under the table things that got exchanged.
It's funny that you mentioned that because this movie came out the same weekend as the Entourage film.
Oh wow.
that was its main competition at the theater.
Wow. Yeah. There we have that.
We haven't mentioned the modern day scenes of the kids playing in the I don't know if it's Africa or some war-torn country, but it's like the Burger King Kids Club where they have like one kid of every nationality and age group, everything.
Age group, gender, there's a girl.
Yeah, they were just missing the one kid in the wheelchair, and they would have had like the full Yahtzee across the board. But
and what was that scene supposed to show? That without FIFA, kids of all races can't stand in a pitch with jumpers for goalposts and play football?
Yeah, I'm not really sure.
I don't get it.
You know what I think they were trying to show? I think what they think exactly, Mark. I think what they're trying to show is, look at us. We did so well. We spread it to the world. Now every kid, regardless of race, color, sex, everybody plays it now, and that's because we did that. Nobody else. We did it, right? And
their mea culpa was having the one girl score the goal at the end. Like, hey, look, we even did it for women's football.
Exactly. We love women's football, so that's why the girl scored. Jesus, you can't make this kind of shitty script up, man.
Oh, man.
I mean, you literally can because they did, but
even when they were having the trophy made, they were trying to get it done on spec. Like they tried to get the trophy guy to make it for free at the same time that they were building a 100,000 seat stadium.
Yeah.
Man.
That stadium still exists today, I believe, because I've seen some Uruguayan football. Remember back in the day we had Goal TV? I think they used to show Uruguayan football in that stadium's still there. And still kind of looks the same as what they showed in the movie, surprisingly.
Sorry, one other thing that I find so absurd is how the film ends. We've not touched on that. So the last scene is May 15th, 2004. It's the announcement that the FIFA World Cup is going to South Africa, and Sepp Blatter goes to open the envelope and he's like, I don't know who this is either. I'm going to find it out just when you do, which you know is bullshit because they hand them a framed certificate saying congratulations. So who frames that and who signs off on getting that commissioned?
Maybe that was Tim Roth.
Somebody higher up. It's just bullshit. And then
that could have been an ad lib line from Tim Roth, what he was talking about.
Maybe, yeah, his corruption thing, maybe. And then they show real footage of Nelson Mandela being passed the FA Cup, the World Cup, sorry. And I'm just like, oh, it just ends on this note of we brought football to Africa. And I wrote in my notes, like, I just randomly looked up when, like, FAs were created in Africa.
Right.
So Ghana, the Gold Coast Football Association was founded in 1920. That's the same year that FIFA announced they were making a World Cup. So, like, football existed in an African nation already. Like, you didn't bring football to Africa in 2004. I just hate it. And, like,
they brought the world
like
to Africa, I guess is what they're trying to say.
Yeah.
But that wasn't even the climax of the movie, though. That was like the post-credit scene. So the actual climax of this movie was Sepp Blatter being voted FIFA president or being reelected. And then at that point, they celebrate for a little bit. Everyone claps, and then
That's awesome.
They cut to the kids,
cut back
and
to
then the
that girl
credits start.
scoring. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
And there's like a speech about whilst the girl's playing, like, in over 100 years of existence.
Oh, God.
So
generation.
you know when you really take to a main character in a movie, you're like, yes, this person won, or yes, this person defeated the evil guy. Did you feel like that when Sepp Blatter won the vote in the end?
I hear it. Justice. Justice for Sepp.
I got up and clapped. I'm like, yes, I like really feel this for Sepp, and no, I don't.
The underdog.
The underdog Sepp.
Do you know what the other weird thing is as well? There's this character, Edgar Wilcox, who is the British journalist who keeps questioning him and eventually gets a interview with Blatter and accuses him of being guilty of embezzling money. And Blatter says all the good they've done for football and how football's like a family and FIFA's a family and he'll protect it. And the journalist's task is to question it, his is to protect it. Like, what? Edgar Wilcox is not a real person. They just made that character up. It's like they didn't want to give the actual journalists any credit, the ones that actually contributed to their downfall. Like, there's David Cohn that wrote that book, The Fall of FIFA, and there's quite a few others. And it's like, nah, we're going to make out that you journalists are there, but we're not going to name check you. We'll name check everybody else along the way, but not you.
They could never do that. They're not going to name one of the journalists and then one of those journalists. If you even research that guy's name, you're going to see all the truth about FIFA, right?
That's true, unless they try their best to discredit them. But I don't think they wanted to spend too much of the film discrediting journalists. They'd rather just glaze over it. You're right, yeah.
And you know what the awesome thing is? FIFA has not changed whatsoever since this movie. So on the theme of propaganda, I just went on FIFA.com. I'm on it right now. The first headline, football thriving in the country of the eternal blue sky, which means Mongolia. So it's thriving. They've got some street kids in monk's robes playing soccer. Like, it's a really nice image, actually. But it's just like that narrative. Like, we brought football to the world. Look, kids in Mongolia are playing this because of us. Right? Like, wow. And then they've published a document that's like 400 pages long that says, Making Football Truly Global, the Vision 2020 to 2023.
Oh, right. Yeah, that's Infantino's like manifest.
Yeah.
Next few years.
Let me ask you guys something.
Yeah.
When did you first realize that organizations like FIFA and the IOC were not as like virtuous as they seemed? Like, when was that illusion broken for you guys?
Oof.
My dad had always kind of told me that things like this were shady, but I guess where it really hit home was the when the 2018 and the 2022 World Cup vote happened. I wasn't as pissed about England because I feel like a lot, even though there's been a lot that's come out about how that was kind of a stitch up and how like none of the Russian entourage were even there at the weekend presentations. It was like it had already been decided. But like the 2022 one where you had credible bids from, I think it was Australia and the US, and then Qatar got it.
Yeah.
That's when I really started to think, I was like, this is... And I got accused by friends of having sour grapes over the Russia, and it wasn't even that one. It was the 2022 one. Like, I was just like, yeah, there's filth here. And I guess, I was just starting to get, by like 2010 when they were awarded, I was getting a bit older, so I'd have been like 25 at the time, starting to understand the world a bit better as you do in your mid-20s. And
I'm jaded.
Yeah, and then it's just like, oh, this is sucky. And then like there was that whole thing about the IOC that came out not long after that with Sebastian Coe, who's like the English head of them, and there was accusations that he was taking bungs all over the place. And around that time.
Yeah, it would be exactly the same for me. I did actually, as someone that's not from England, I actually did feel Like, how does Russia win a bid against England? I mean, London could host a World Cup on its own, right? The infrastructure is there. It's the country that probably loves football the most. They would do a killer job hosting it, like they did with the 2012 London Olympics, I find, which are really good. I think they would have been a great job, but the Qatar thing got me totally, because the questions came right away, right? Everybody and their mothers knew that there's, death camps basically that are going to be building these stadiums. There's modern day slavery. When are they even going to play this World Cup? You can't play it in the summer, right? And now they're obviously proposing to move it to the winter time, which, that's never been done before. And yeah, there's just too many questions and too many good bids especially for 2022.
Yeah, 2018. I mean, you had the Olympics happening in Sochi. I think it was 2014, or was that Brazil? No, Brazil 2014.
2018 was Sochi, I believe.
Was it? No, 2018 was the Russia World Cup.
2018 was the Russia World Cup.
I think it was 2014. So
Sochi was 2014. You're right.
Right. So it kind of made sense that they had the infrastructure there to hold a international event. But yeah, Qatar, where there were so many variables that just didn't make sense for them to host it. I mean, you even had, I think it was Japan was putting in a bid as well, where they were introducing like all these technological developments, and they had hosted a successful World Cup. And then for it to go to Qatar, and they're all just kind of up there shaking hands, and you just knew at that point,
was it Japan that had like that virtual reality plan so that people could watch
the AR
stadiums in their own country? Yeah.
Oh man, they're even showing off technology with the instant translation, so fans could speak to each other on the spot. And then so they had that technology set up where they would use 360 cams to capture the entire game live. And then in your town, you would go to, like, say here in Toronto, you would go to the Sky Dome and you would watch the match live, and it would be broadcast using AR. Like, that would have been insane. But instead, we're getting a World Cup around Christmas time in 2022. So
they didn't have the oil money, so they didn't
it'll be interesting for sure.
They're using mechanical clouds to block some of the sun or something. So one of the last.
And a bunch of Europeans just basically overtaking. By the way, Qatar's a pretty small place. Overtaking Qatar, being drunk and rowdy. A bunch of Europeans doing that. Like, exactly. Like,
well, they make countries change their laws, don't they?
For sure. But
that's one thing. Yeah. There was a thing about Brazil, wasn't it? Brazil had some of the states in Brazil have pretty strict like drinking laws, and they made them basically change the laws so that people could drink in public spaces for Brazil. So.
Yeah. Even speaking of Brazil, like, it's so sad to see images of these brand new stadiums that are being built, and then right next to them you have essentially like tent cities. Was the same thing with South Africa, right? It sums up like the corruption in the other. I don't know.
Somebody was saying that stadium that was built in the middle of the Amazon rainforest. There's one stadium that's like, it's never been used again.
It's abandoned.
It's abandoned.
You had to ship building materials up the Amazon River to build this thing.
Yeah.
For what?
I mean, what kind of legacy? Like, they're talking on their website and in this movie about, oh, look, we're bringing football to the world. What kind of legacy are you leaving? Putting all these countries into massive debts, building stadiums while you can't feed the local population. Like, do something worthwhile, right? It's crazy. Yeah.
Have you guys ever seen the Homeless World Cup?
Yes, I have. India won it last year.
Oh, really? Yeah. That's a cool concept. I mean, that's something to get behind, as opposed to, and it sucks because the FIFA World Cup is so corrupt, but at the same time, it's going to roll around, and what are we going to do? Boycott it and not watch any matches?
Absolutely not, because, we'll all be glued to our TV screens, if not trying to travel there to watch it. We'll be, and we'll gladly say, hey, take my money, FIFA, because I'm just such a sucker for football, and, the international competitions, the World Cups, the Euros mean so much to my country, especially for you guys, because you guys are both from Europe. Like, you can't ignore it.
What other options do we have?
Exactly.
Right? Maybe, I don't know.
And if Canada makes the World Cup, come on. If Canada makes the World Cup, this entire country will shut down.
That's it. Well, 2026, we're going to host the World Cup.
Yeah.
So even at that point, we're going to make it, obviously, at that point, unless they change the rules. But it just sucks because it's so corrupt and there's no other option. But I mean, it's been a century. Maybe it's time for another international organization to step up. But
that's the thing, right? That's the thing. They can get away from corruption because people will still eat their products up. People will still eat them up. And it'll have no negative impact on that whatsoever. It might have a negative impact on the local populations of where they're hosting this tournament. But for the people, for the money, for the sponsors, there's going to be zero difference.
Yeah. Well, there was a time, I think, when the allegations of slavery came out in Qatar, like Coca-Cola started to pull back. I think Kodak, I don't even know if they were still around then, they started to pull back. You saw a lot of these companies try and distance themselves, but once Twitter moved on to the next outrage moment, people forgot about it, right?
That's all it is. Everything's within the moment, right? The next big thing comes, everything's forgotten. Remember the Australian wildfires? That was such a huge deal a couple of months ago. Now, because of COVID-19, nobody even talks about it anymore.
2020 has been a ride, man. We were going to break out into World War III in February.
Yeah, exactly. We went from the world being on fire to World War III to a global pandemic, which obviously are all real things. And I mean, not to be compared to sport, but
we got the murder hornets coming up next.
Now we got the murder hornets. You know, we're it's gonna be crazy. Anyways, I guess we can move on and talk about some of the footy flicks. So, what are your favorite football scenes in this movie? Let's start with Adam.
It's hard, right? They rely on a lot of archive footage rather than recreating anything. So it's almost like by default, the magical multicultural game that's happening is the best footy flicks scene in the film, even though the point it's trying to make is absolutely absurd.
Yeah.
And then it's weird. I don't even think the highlights they necessarily show in some regards are the best moments of each World Cup. Like, again, not because I'm an England fan, but why, when you do Mexico 86, show Maradona handling the ball into the goal when he scored another goal in that game? Moment. Yeah, isn't the one where he dribbled past, though, a better show in the World Cup in a better light where he dribbled past half the team?
Dude, and aren't they literally saying our referees, FIFA employs such shit referees that they actually,
Or is that another fuck you to England?
Maybe.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's true.
Because again, with the 66 World Cup, they don't properly show the highlights of that. They show it has the Who song, Substitute, playing, and it just shows people dancing in the streets watching it through shop windows. Like, you don't actually see any proper footage of that game. So maybe even that's meant to be a screw you to England. Like, hey, look, you did care about winning the World Cup. We're going to show you all celebrating it in the streets, but not show you any footage.
Well, you guys also
movie is a screw you.
Yeah, you guys also sing that song, right? Jewels Remain Still Gleaming.
Yeah, that was from Three Lions. Yeah,
you guys love Jewels Remain.
Yeah. So yeah, I think it's anyway, back to the point. It's probably that the multicultural, non-gender specific game that's going on in that dirt pitch.
Yeah. How about you, Mark?
Street football. Well, we had three different types. We had the street football that kind of like was the interstitial between each key moment. And then we had the mythical match between the Ukrainians and the Germans. And then the actual archival footage. I mean, those are probably the best parts of the movie to me. So, I mean, as terrible as this movie is, the footy flicks were pretty decent. So I'm going to rate it pretty highly.
Yeah, I mean, not bad for the archival footage. So for myself, not bad for the archival footage. Loved seeing the scenes with Pele. There was a couple of scenes with Pele there.
Yeah, that's true.
And, again, like, it's so hard not to nitpick this movie. And it's like, they're saying, oh, well, these black people, they can't play our game. They can't play the white man game. Pele, he's a genius, though. Right? Like, it makes no sense. But yes, the Pele scenes I enjoyed. Some of the historic World Cup footage, especially with the ad boards and the tango ball and things like that. But yes, I would say the street football game was definitely my favorite if we're talking about solely footy flicks. Because I remember this one scene towards the end where they've switched back to that, and this kid gets the ball and goes through like three players and then lays it off for another kid. Maybe it's the girl, and she just it was like a perfect move. So I really enjoyed that portion of it.
Cool.
Yeah.
So we all liked it, sounds like.
We didn't mind the footy flicks, put it that way. That was probably the most redeeming quality of this film, were the actual football scenes.
So has the director done anything else of note?
No, I looked up. It's because it's French. It's mostly French language movies. And there was nothing that I had noticed that had kind of...
even that movie, Paris Je t'aime, but he did a segment in that.
Yeah.
Because I remember that being really well received. Yeah, it's shot really beautifully. But
he was an assistant director on The Man in the Iron Mask, though, that was quite a big
DiCaprio movie.
Yeah. That's of note. As a director solely, don't know.
A lot of French TV shows, which I can't speak to. I haven't watched a lot of.
Me neither. Yeah, but I mean, I guess as an assistant director, that's a pretty big movie, The Man in the Iron Mask, and of course, United Passions, eh?
I have one more final quote, actually, that I forgot. I was just flicking through my notes. This is a review from TV Tropes. They're talking about Sam Neill's performance. And it's like, because Havilange is Brazilian, he is played by Sam Neill, a New Zealand native born in Northern Ireland. Neill chooses to use an accent that varies from scene to scene between American cowboy, Russian, and how an alien from outer space might speak. It's unclear to us whether Neill has ever spoken to a person from Brazil. I needed to share that because I was flicking through my notes and I just thought we'd missed it when we were talking about the accents.
Yeah,
no,
for sure.
I had to look up, like when they first show him, he speaks for a while, then I had to look up who this character was, and that's when I realized he was Brazilian.
Yeah.
Bad. Tim Roth actually did look like Sepp Blatter at some points.
He did.
Granted, with a lot more hair than Blatter has, but he actually does look like him.
Yeah, like earlier era Blatter, yeah. He kind of looks if you go back and look at old pictures of him, he does look pretty accurate, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, anything else in regards to footy flicks? Anything else that caught you guys' eye?
That's it, man.
Not from me.
All right, then it's that time. It's time for trivia.
Okay, so I've spent this entire film slagging off FIFA. This entire episode slagging off FIFA. I will give them one thing. They did create the World Cup. Some of my favourite football moments ever have been the World Cup. So I have questions that are celebrating the World Cup.
Right. And just to let everybody know that Adam is the quiz master this week. So it'll be me against Mark. And I am behind by a lot. So at least 3 points from Mark.
Chance to catch up, yeah.
And 4 points back of Adam. And the total is, I think, Adam on top with 8 points, Mark with 7, and I've got 4 points. So I've got quite a bit of catching up to do. Because the season's not long. We're in the... what's that word I'm looking for? We're in the
home stretch.
Home stretch. That's it.
80th minute.
Yeah.
The 80th minute. We're in the 80th minute. We're in the second half, the 80th minute. I'm ready though.
We're going to do 12 episodes. I don't know if we've mentioned that before, right? So we're looking at doing 12 episodes for this season.
Yeah.
Yeah, we haven't mentioned that. So yeah.
And this is episode
4
8.
weeks left to go.
And this is episode 8. Yeah.
Yeah.
We've planned out the rest of them. There's going to be some good ones in there.
We've got some bangers.
Quite a ride, guys.
Okay, so I've done something different again a little bit. I've picked some iconic World Cup questions, some a little bit different, and I've basically got 6 questions. So you've got 3 questions each to answer. I'm going to pick a number between 1 and 6, and then you'll get that question. The other person doesn't get to answer it. And we'll just go through that way. So, Raghav, you're behind, so you can pick the first number. So between 1 and 6.
I am going to pick number 1. Let's go number 1, man.
Okay.
That's what we always strive to be.
Who holds the record?
Sorry, go ahead.
Exactly, number 1. No. Who holds the record for scoring the most goals in a single World Cup? Is it Miroslav Klose, Just Fontaine, or Jeff Hurst?
Who was the second one?
Just Fontaine.
I'm going to say Miroslav Klose.
I'm afraid you are wrong. It is Just Fontaine.
See, I knew it was the guy that I didn't know.
Yeah, he scored, incredibly, he scored 13 goals in the 1958 World Cup, including scoring 4 against defending champions West Germany. The highest total ever scored by a single player.
All right.
Miroslav Klose does hold the record for the most goals in World Cups altogether.
Right, yes, that's correct, that's correct.
That came up last week when we were talking about Marta.
Should have known.
Yes.
Should have known.
Okay, Mark.
Number
2, 3,
3.
4, 5, or 6. 3, okay. Who won the Golden Boot in 2002? Was it Ronaldo, Rivaldo, or again, Miroslav Klose?
2002. I want to say Ronaldo.
Yeah, it was. He scored 8 goals, including the winners in the final against Germany.
There we go.
I don't think Mark clarified which Ronaldo he was talking about, though.
CR7 wasn't around for another couple years.
Kidding. All right. Do I get to pick a number?
Yeah, 2, 4, 5, or 6.
Let's go 5. Let's go 5.
5. Okay, which nation has the most red cards in World Cup history? Argentina, Germany, or Brazil?
It has to be the RGs, right? It has to be Argentina.
Like, final answer?
Yes.
It is Brazil, surprisingly.
What?
Oh, wow.
I did not expect that. When I looked it up, I was like, it's going to be a dirty nation.
What happened to Samba? What happened to Ginga?
I know. Ginga's
Too
alive.
dangerous, man. The Jinga's way too dangerous.
It's not by much. I think Brazil had 13, and I think Argentina had like 11 or something. I'm going to look. But yeah, sorry.
It's been a disaster.
Best luck here. No. So sorry. So sorry.
No worries. Redeem myself for the last question.
Mark, pick a number. You have 2 or 4.
Give me 4.
Pele famously said an African team would win the World Cup by the year 2000. They didn't, but can you name one of the 3 teams who were the first African team to make it to a World Cup quarterfinal? Cameroon, Ghana, or Senegal?
Cameroon, Ghana, or Senegal?
Yeah.
Quarterfinal?
I know this.
Yeah. So which 2 of the 3 teams were the first African team to make it to a World Cup quarterfinal?
Oh, geez. I remember the Black Stars doing really well in 2010. I'm going to say Ghana.
It was not.
It was Senegal, wasn't it?
No, it was not. It was Cameroon. 1990, Italia 90. They actually got knocked out by England. England was super lucky. They were losing, I think it was England were losing 2-1 in extra time to Cameroon. And then England got 2 penalties to win 3-2.
Well, lucky I didn't get that question.
So, Raghav, you have the choice of 2 or 6.
Let's go with 2.
Okay, this is kind of a double header. Name the 1958 World Cup hosts and who won that tournament.
So 50 Brazil. The host would be Sweden, and Brazil won it.
Well done. Of course, we covered that.
Do I get 2 points for that?
The legend. Nah, just 1 point.
Oh, come on.
And then, Mark, that leaves you with question 6. Which nation scored the first ever World Cup goal? And your choices are the USA, France, or Uruguay.
First one was hosted in Uruguay. I'm going to say Uruguay.
It was not. It was France.
France. Oh, okay.
France.
Can you imagine?
Lucien Lauren scored the first ever goal. Interestingly, though, the USA also played their first group game in that day, and they were the first ever team to keep a clean sheet as they beat Belgium 3-0.
All right.
So, after today's questions, Raghav, you have clawed back some space with 5 points, and Mark, you've drawn level with me at the top with 8 points. So the score's at 8-5.
Not bad.
So I'm still I'm still 3 points behind. We can do this. We can do this.
That's one episode's worth. Yeah, you're in the running.
No, that was awesome, though. Those were some really interesting and creative questions.
Got you thinking.
For sure.
You could have gone the other route and picked some bribery and scandal.
Yeah, I very nearly went the route of, okay, let's see who embezzled the most money. But I was like, no, I've ragged on them. I'd like to celebrate the World Cup.
Yep.
How much did it cost to buy off this FIFA exec in 2018? Was it
Yeah, exactly.
2 million, 4 million?
Yeah, crazy stuff. But no, those were good set of questions, and actually got our minds off of all the corruption that exists within FIFA, and just kind of got us to speak to the good moments, the moments that we actually love and watch on television every 4 years. So no, that was really good. Kudos to you, Adam. Okay, it's that time. The match day matinee table, the standings. So I am going to challenge both of you to first rank this movie out of 5, and then where would you place this on the match day matinee table?
Okay. Where does our scale start, right? Do we start at half point, or is 0 a legitimate score?
You can do whatever you want between 0 and 5.
Do you want me to read out the table for you, Adam?
Sure.
Yeah, you can do that.
Let me pull it up. Give your rating. I'll pull up the table in the meantime.
I'm going to say I'm going to agree with Rotten Tomatoes and give it 0. I just think it has too many crappy things. I can't see any of its redeeming features past all the bullshit that's in it. It doesn't even get half a point. Maybe harsh. That's where I'm going. Nothing.
Okay, so maybe then before we discuss the match day matinee table, Mark, can I get you to give it out of 5 stars? What would you give it?
I'm going to give it half a star. just because it was visually interesting. There was some great scenes to watch in it. If you're not paying attention to the context of them, then at least it looked good. It was garbage film, but it was pretty. Regev?
Yeah, so I agree. Definitely one of the worst films I've probably ever had the pleasure of watching, or not pleasure of watching. I'd go half a star out of 5. This was a terrible, terrible movie. Like really, really bad. Yeah, I mean, I have nothing else to say apart from that.
Table.
Here
he goes.
Okay, read it out.
So number 1, we still have the Damned United holding strong. At second place, we have Mike Bassett, England manager. Third place, we have Bend It Like Beckham. Fourth place, Ultras. Fifth place, Pele, Birth of a Legend. Sixth, Final Score. And seventh is Kicking and Screaming.
Awesome.
This is for you guys to decide. I've made my feelings pretty clear.
I think it's pretty clear, to be honest, right? I mean, based on the stars we've given it, I think it'd go above Kicking and Screaming. I am totally kidding, guys. This is going to go below. This is going to go below
Kicking and Screaming. Is this another of those moments where he tries to defend the indefensible?
No,
definitely.
No, I can't defend this movie if I tried, to be honest. And this will go. This is like hard last place.
Do we want to put this into 12th?
I would actually be tempted to do that. Yeah, not even give it the dignity away.
You know what, man? I don't anticipate any movie that we watch from here on out actually being worse than this movie, to be honest.
Okay, I'm going to say let's do that. We should do that.
12?
I think that's fair.
Okay, we make the rules.
It's got 1 star collectively between the 3 of us. I do not think another film we review this season is going to get 1 star collectively between the 3 of us.
All right, so the table now is, we would say number 1 is The Damned United, number 2 is Mike Bassett, number 3 is Bend It Like Beckham, 4 is Ultras, 5th is Pele, Birth of a Legend, 6th is Final Score, 7th is Kicking and Screaming, and after 7th, all the way down in 12th is United Passions.
It's like the team that's been deducted points for financial irregularities, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Perfect analogy.
Yeah.
Brilliant. This has been the best episode yet. I'm so happy.
FIFA does it every time, man. The actual organization sucks, and they put on a beautiful event despite it.
Yep.
That's what they did for us here.
They surely got us talking.
Yeah.
All right, guys, that brings us towards the end of our show. So I guess, before we sign off, is there anything either of you want to say about FIFA, this movie? Is there anything left to be said?
It's a damn shame that FIFA is our only option.
Yep. Yeah. It is a damn shame. It's okay. Maybe one day we can have a movement where we do an offshoot and start controlling the world in a football sense.
There actually is one, right? There's like the CONIFA or something like that.
CONIFA, which is made up of countries that FIFA won't give membership to / like displaced people. Like there's there's a team that are like North Koreans that are displaced across the world, so can't represent North Korea.
There's Tamil Elam. Yeah, I know there's Tamil Elam is one of those teams.
Yorkshire have a team. Jersey have a team because they're not allowed to enter FIFA.
Wow.
Let's get behind CONIFA.
I mean, they did just get cancelled because of COVID this year, but that's fine.
That's all fine.
Everything got cancelled because of COVID.
We can restart it again. That's okay. Yeah, so I mean, like I was saying, we've reached the end of our show. Adam, if people want to find you, where can they find you?
Flameboy84 on Twitter and Joypad Goalposts on Instagram. And I am playing a Pro Evo tournament, so I'll be posting links to streaming that. It starts tomorrow night with some friends over at Lapsed Gamer Radio. I'm representing Barcelona, so hopefully I win. We'll see. Cool. Good on Pro Evo. Been practicing.
Yeah, I'm thinking about purchasing the game as well, and using some option files to get the teams I want in there, specifically Canadian Premier League. I saw that one of the Saga City Collective boys actually has a League One Ontario teams on there, which they look so crisp. Like it looks awesome.
Credit River Cup.
Yeah, the Credit River Cup, exactly. The Credit River Cup. Yeah. And how about you, Mark? Where can people find you and what are you up to generally?
I'll be on Twitter at Mark83 and Instagram at A3Football. And next week, I'll be bringing you guys Diamantino. So I'll be hosting the film next week. And I think it's going to be interesting. You guys will enjoy it.
Yeah. So next week's movie, what is it called? Diamantino?
Diamantino. It's a fictional account of a footballer who's very much based on Cristiano Ronaldo.
Nice.
Portuguese language film, so the first of Matchday Matinee.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And I guess just to, I know we haven't mentioned this before in this podcast, but every week one of us actually picks a different movie. So today was Adam's pick with United Passions. Next week is Diamantino by Mark. I still have to decide when I wanted to pick the week after. So we kind of just, switch it around, and then whoever picks the movie kind of gets to lead the discussion and get input from the others. And we just feel like it works really good that way and really opens our eyes up to other people's. Like Diamantino, I would have never watched if you didn't recommend it, at least, right? So it's a good way to open our eyes to football movies, even
Gives
beyond.
us a bit of a break as well.
Exactly.
To be honest, yeah.
Exactly. I mean, for myself, my name is Raghav Sandhu, and you can find me at Raghav Sandhu on both Twitter and Instagram. I'm not up to much except for working, but I will be back next week with this podcast. With that, from the terraces to the theater, we're Matchday Matinee. See you next time.